Hello, baby. Tonight, let me take you on a gentle journey through the soft whispers of the forest, where a glowing little fox with a magical lantern lights the way through the mysteries of the night. This is a tale of courage, kindness, and the quiet wonders that appear when the stars begin to twinkle. It's called The Lantern Fox and the Night Path. In this story, you'll meet a fluffy little fox named Luma who carries a lantern made of starlight. One night, the forest falls under a sleepy hush and the night path, a trail only visible in dreams, appears. With the lantern's glow and a heart full of wonder, Luma takes her first steps into a magical adventure where shadows are not scary but soft and curious, and each step brings her closer to something truly special. Once upon a time, in the heart of a deep, whispering forest, where the trees swayed like lullabies and the leaves hummed lullaby tunes, lived a little fox named Luma. Luma had the softest golden fur, like moonlight resting on morning dew, and her eyes sparkled with the gentle shimmer of twilight stars. She was no ordinary fox, for Luma carried with her a small lantern that glowed with a soft silver light. It wasn't made from fire or oil. It was a lantern of starlight, a gift from the moon herself. Each night, as the sky painted itself in shades of navy and plum, Luma would trot quietly through the woods, lighting her lantern as dusk fell over the treetops. She didn't need to go anywhere in particular. She simply loved to wander, lighting up the mossy trails for the sleepy bugs and helping the baby owlets find their nests again. The creatures of the forest adored her. They called her the Lantern Fox, and they always knew it was bedtime when her soft light passed by. One particular evening, when the wind was calm and the stars were taking their time to wake up, something curious happened. Luma noticed a faint silver line curling across the ground, like a ribbon that shimmered when you blinked. It wasn't there before. It looked like a path, but not one made of stone or dirt. It twinkled faintly, just like her lantern, and led deep into a part of the forest she had never seen. Luma tilted her head and blinked. The path was not there the second time she looked. But then, as she gently swayed her lantern, the path shimmered back into view, softly glowing beneath her paws. Her ears twitched. Her heart pitter-pattered gently, not from fear, but from something else. Curiosity. The night path had appeared. Quietly, carefully, Luma stepped onto it. As she did, the forest seemed to hush even more, like it was holding its breath. Trees arched protectively overhead, their leaves whispering secrets in a language only nighttime understood. The wind carried the scent of distant stars and forgotten lullabies. And Luma, with her little lantern swaying from her mouth, took her first steps into the unknown. She passed mushrooms that glowed like little lanterns of their own, blinking slowly as if sleepy. A group of snails waved politely with their shiny antennae. Fireflies circled her lantern in a gentle dance, lighting her way like old friends. The deeper she went, the quieter it became, and the more the path sparkled. Then, from the soft mist ahead, came a hum. It was not a frightening hum. It was warm and round, like a lullaby being hummed by the forest itself. Luma slowed, placing each paw gently on the glowing trail. She followed the sound through a grove of sleepy pines, where the air smelled like sugar and moss. And there, nestled between the roots of an ancient tree, sat something she had never seen before. It was a stone. Not just any stone, but a round one, smooth and pale blue, like a drop of sky that had forgotten how to float. It was humming, ever so gently, in harmony with the light of her lantern. Luma sat before it and tilted her head again. "What are you?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. The stone pulsed softly, as if breathing. And then, to Luma's amazement, a small light peeked out from inside it. It was like a tiny version of her lantern's glow, dim, warm, and friendly. The light floated up and around her, circling her fluffy ears, then paused in front of her nose. A soft voice like wind in a dream whispered, "You found the night path, and now you will help others find their way." Luma blinked slowly, her heart calm and full. She didn't know what the voice meant yet, but she nodded gently, as though she understood. The little light danced in approval and settled back into the stone, which slowly stopped humming and faded into the moss, as if it had never been there at all. But the path still glowed. Luma looked ahead. It was still there, winding and curling deeper into the night. The moon now sat higher in the sky, watching like a quiet guardian. The stars had fully awakened, winking their good-night greetings. Luma felt no fear, only wonder. With a calm breath and a swish of her tail, she lifted her lantern and stepped forward, the night path lighting up with each gentle paw print. And so the lantern fox wandered on, guided by stars, followed by dreams, and glowing softly in the hush of the sleeping forest. As Luma followed the glowing night path, the forest around her began to change in the most curious ways. The trees, once tall and still, now seemed to lean in gently as she passed, their branches swaying ever so slightly, as if whispering to one another about the tiny fox with the glowing lantern. Their leaves sparkled with dew that shimmered like stars caught in a net. And though everything was quiet, it didn't feel empty. It felt like something magical was listening. The ground beneath her paws became softer, almost like a blanket, and little tufts of moss tickled her toes. The night path curved around ancient tree trunks and wound between sleepy brooks where water whispered lullabies to the stones. Crickets played gentle tunes like a symphony of soft bells, and far above, a gentle breeze carried the perfume of night flowers. As Luma trotted on, the path began to widen, and in the middle of a silvery glade, she saw something unusual. A small bridge stretched across a stream made of moonlight. Yes, moonlight, not water. The stream didn't rush or gurgle. It drifted slowly, glowing faintly with silver light, as if the moon herself had poured a little of her glow into the woods. Luma stepped up to the bridge and paused. The bridge was delicate, made of woven branches and sleepy vines. Fireflies lit its edges like lantern posts, guiding her across. She placed one paw on the bridge, then another. It didn't creak or shift. It held her as gently as a cradle. The night path shimmered across it, winding to the other side. As she reached the center of the bridge, something stirred beneath the glowing stream. A ripple moved softly across the surface, and from the water rose a figure, tall and willowy, made of light and mist. It had gentle eyes like the twilight sky, and a voice that echoed like wind through chimes. "Little lantern fox," the figure spoke, its voice as soft as feathers falling. "You carry the light of wonder. The night path has chosen you. Do you know why?" Luma blinked up at the figure, her lantern glowing steadily. She gave a small shake of her head. "Because," the figure said, kneeling so its glowing face was closer to hers, "there are dreams that wander too far, wishes that forget how to find their way home. You must guide them. You must remind the night of its gentle promises." Luma's ears perked, her heart quiet and curious. She didn't speak, but she nodded once. The figure smiled, and from its hands grew a tiny wisp of light, soft and flickering like a candle's sigh. It floated toward Luma and settled in her lantern. It didn't make the lantern brighter. It made it warmer. The kind of warmth that reminded one of bedtime hugs and the sound of rain on windows. "This is the first dream," the figure whispered. "It belongs to someone who cannot sleep tonight. Walk the path until you find where it belongs." And just like that, the figure vanished, melting back into the moonlit stream. Luma stood very still for a moment, feeling the hum of the new light in her lantern. She didn't know exactly how she would find where the dream belonged, but somehow she trusted the path. She trusted her paws, and she trusted the stars watching quietly above. With a deep breath and a gentle swish of her tail, she continued on. Not far from the bridge, the forest opened into a small hollow. The trees grew farther apart here, and the grass was soft and velvety. In the center of the hollow sat a curious creature. It was a young hedgehog, his quills ruffled from tossing and turning. He looked tired, his eyes blinking slowly as he held a little blanket made of twine and clover. Luma approached quietly, her lantern casting a soft circle of light around them. The hedgehog looked up and gave a tiny gasp. "Oh, a light. Are you a dream?" Luma tilted her head, then set the lantern down gently beside him. The glow reached his tiny paws, and the moment it did, the little dream light inside the lantern pulsed softly. The hedgehog's eyes widened. He leaned closer, drawn to its glow. "I've been trying to fall asleep, but my dreams are hiding," he whispered. "I think they got lost." Luma nuzzled him gently with her nose. The little dream light drifted from the lantern and settled into the hedgehog's chest, glowing faintly inside him like a tiny star. His eyelids drooped almost instantly. "Oh, that's warm," he mumbled, curling into a sleepy ball. "That feels like home." Luma watched as the hedgehog sighed and nestled into the grass. The night path pulsed gently, as if pleased. Then, just as quietly, the path began to lead onward again, curling around the hollow and into the next part of the forest. Luma picked up her lantern and followed. One dream had found its way home. But there were more. Somewhere, hidden in the hush of night, other dreams waited to be guided, and the night path would show her where to go. The night path continued to wind softly through the forest, its shimmering glow weaving through the trees like a ribbon of light. As Luma followed it, the gentle hush of the woods deepened. The leaves above rustled like whispers, the stars twinkled like sleepy eyes blinking slowly in the sky, and the breeze carried the scent of lavender and pine. Luma walked with quiet purpose, her lantern glowing with the warmth of dreams and wonder. The light within her lantern pulsed gently now, not urgent, but expectant, as if it was listening for something only it could hear. Luma's golden paws made no sound on the mossy trail. She passed glowing bluebells that swayed softly as she walked by, and sleepy fireflies hovered like drifting snowflakes, dotting the air with little pinpoints of light. Then, just beyond a curtain of hanging vines, she came to a clearing unlike any she'd seen before. It was perfectly round, like a little moon carved into the earth. In its center stood a tall stump, and atop the stump, gently rocking back and forth, sat a small raccoon. His striped tail curled around him like a blanket, and he clutched a tiny wooden flute in his paws. He wasn't playing it. He just held it close, his eyes staring up at the sky. Luma stepped forward, her lantern casting its gentle light across the clearing. The raccoon turned and blinked at her, his eyes wide and tired. "Oh," he said softly, "are you the fox from the stories? The one with the light?" Luma nodded once, her lantern flickering softly in response. "I thought I dreamed you," the raccoon whispered, rubbing one eye. "But I guess dreams can visit too." He looked back at the stars. "I've been trying to write a song for the stars, but none of the notes feel right. It's like my music got lost somewhere in the night." Luma stepped closer, her lantern now glowing just beside the raccoon. Inside, the dream light pulsed again, brighter this time. It rose from the lantern, swirling like a soft mist, and floated gently toward the little wooden flute. The raccoon gasped as the light touched the flute. A single note echoed into the clearing, soft and sweet, like the first raindrop on a quiet pond. Then another note followed, and another, like sleepy stars dancing across the sky. The raccoon lifted the flute and played. The music came slowly, as if it had been sleeping inside him all along. It wasn't loud or grand. It was gentle and tender, like a lullaby the stars themselves might hum to one another when no one was listening. When he finished, the raccoon sighed deeply. "That was the song I was missing," he whispered. "That was the dream I lost." Luma nuzzled him kindly and watched as the dream light settled into the flute, becoming a soft glow within the wood. The raccoon lay back on the stump, smiling up at the sky, and closed his eyes. The night path sparkled once more, curling around the edge of the clearing and beckoning onward. Luma followed. As she walked, the forest shifted again. The trees grew taller, their trunks straight like candlesticks. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and cloudberries. Above her, the stars moved slowly, forming new shapes, tiny constellations that shifted like puzzle pieces in the sky. The path led her through a grove of trees whose bark shimmered like silver. Here, the wind began to hum again, a low, soft tune that made her fur ripple with calm. She paused at the edge of the grove, where the night path widened into a soft meadow. In the middle of the meadow stood a large, leafy bush. At first, Luma thought it was empty, but then she heard a tiny sniffle. She crept closer, careful not to disturb the hush. Tucked beneath the bush's leaves was a baby deer, his tiny legs folded beneath him, his ears drooped with sleepiness and sadness. "Hello?" he whispered, noticing the glow. "Are you someone who listens?" Luma sat quietly beside him and lowered her lantern. The baby deer looked at the light, and for a moment his eyes shimmered with tears. "I had a dream," he whispered, "but then I got scared and I ran, and now I don't know how to get back." The lantern flickered gently. The light inside stirred once again and floated out in a slow swirl. It curled around the baby deer, wrapping him in a warm, glimmering cocoon. The deer blinked slowly as the light pulsed around him, and his breathing grew calm. "It feels like home," he murmured. Luma nuzzled his cheek gently. The light faded into his chest, settling in his heart. He curled deeper into the soft grass, his lashes brushing his fur. I think I remember the way now, he whispered as he drifted into sleep. The night path shone softly ahead. The forest watched in quiet wonder as Luma stood and followed the shimmering trail once more. She didn't know where the path would lead next. But with every step, the stars seemed to grow closer, the dreams grew stronger, and her little lantern glowed more warmly than ever before. The night path shimmered like a gentle stream of silver, winding its way through the quiet forest. Luma's lantern swayed softly as she walked, its warm glow casting a peaceful circle of light around her paws. With every step, the night deepened, not in darkness, but in quiet magic. The trees whispered above her, their branches weaving a canopy of dreaming leaves. Crickets hummed lullabies, and owls blinked sleepily from their nests. Luma's heart was calm, steady like the rhythm of the stars. She didn't wonder where she was going. She only followed the path, trusting it would lead her to the next dream in need. After a time, the trees began to thin. The path led to a place that felt suspended between moments, like the breath before a song begins. A wide hill rose before her, covered in grass so soft it looked like velvet. The stars seemed closer here, watching with quiet interest. At the very top of the hill stood a single tree, tall, slender, and glistening like frost under moonlight. Beneath the tree sat a tiny mouse, wrapped in a scarf that trailed behind him like a sleepy shadow. His paws were tucked close, and he looked up at the stars with an expression full of wonder and worry. Luma padded up the hill, her lantern swaying gently. The mouse turned his head and blinked in surprise, but not fear. "Oh," he said in a whisper, "I've heard of you, the fox who carries dreams." Luma sat beside him, the light of her lantern painting soft shapes on the grass. "I'm waiting for my dream," the mouse said quietly. "It's a very small one. I'm afraid it got lost." Luma tilted her head, listening. The lantern flickered, and inside the soft light stirred again. It rose from the lantern and drifted toward the mouse, floating gently above his head like a feather on the breeze. The mouse's eyes followed it, and he gasped softly. "Is that mine?" The dream light pulsed as if to answer, and then, with a little sigh, it drifted down and touched the tip of his nose. The mouse closed his eyes. His whiskers twitched, and a tiny smile curled across his face. "I remember now," he murmured. "I wanted to build a nest so high I could see the stars every night. I was afraid it was too small a dream, but it wasn't lost. It just needed to be found." The dreamlight settled into his scarf, leaving a faint shimmer behind. The mouse snuggled into the roots of the glowing tree and let out a deep, contented sigh. Luma watched quietly for a while. Then she turned her gaze to the tree. Its branches glowed with soft white blossoms that flickered gently, like dreams resting in petals. The wind played a sleepy tune through its limbs, and for a moment, Luma simply stood there, bathed in the tree's peace. The night path pulsed softly beneath her paws. It was time to move on. As Luma descended the hill, the landscape began to change again. The trees faded into low shrubs and wildflowers, and soon she came upon a glen where the air shimmered faintly, like morning mist lit by moonlight. It was quiet, so quiet that even the stars seemed to listen more closely. In the center of the glen stood a cluster of smooth, pale stones. Resting on one of them was a young squirrel, her tail curled protectively around her and her eyes wide open, gazing at nothing. Luma approached with slow steps, her lantern glowing softly. The squirrel didn't flinch. She looked at the light and whispered, "I've lost something I can't name." Luma sat beside her. The dream light stirred again and rose from the lantern. But this time it didn't fly toward the squirrel. Instead, it drifted slowly in a circle above them, weaving gentle loops in the air as if thinking. The squirrel watched it, eyes glistening. "I think I forgot how to feel safe." The dreamlight paused. Then it pulsed warmly and floated down, wrapping gently around the squirrel like a blanket made of moonlight. She shivered, then slowly relaxed. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the feeling." The light faded into her fur, glowing faintly within her tiny heart. Her breathing slowed, and soon her eyes closed. Luma rose quietly, her lantern glowing steady and calm. The night path stretched forward once more, curling through a garden of drowsy sunflowers that nodded in their sleep. Somewhere beyond the flowers, more dreams waited, lost, lonely, or simply forgotten. But the lantern fox was still walking. Step by step, glowing with gentle light, she followed the silver ribbon of the night path into the ever-deepening hush of the dreaming forest. The night path grew narrower as Luma followed it through a grove of whispering willows. Their long, trailing leaves swept the ground like curtains drawn across a stage, and each time Luma passed beneath them, they swayed gently as if bowing to her lantern's light. The hush of the night had grown deeper now, almost sacred, and the stars above shimmered like delicate thoughts drifting across the sky. Luma's paws made soft sounds on the dewy grass, and her lantern glowed steadily with the warmth of quiet dreams. The forest around her seemed to breathe in time with her steps, slow, gentle, peaceful. Her heart was calm, but she could feel something waiting ahead. Not frightening, no, but different. Beyond the last curtain of willow leaves, the night path opened into a strange place. It was a wide, circular clearing, perfectly still. No breeze moved, no sound stirred. The ground was covered in soft moss that shimmered faintly, and in the very center was a pool of perfectly still water. It reflected the night sky so clearly that it was hard to tell where the earth ended and the heavens began. At the edge of the pool sat a small, feathery bird, a nightjar with pale feathers that blended into the moonlight. Her wings were tucked close, her eyes wide and unblinking. Luma approached slowly, her lantern casting gentle reflections across the water. The nightjar didn't speak at first. She simply turned to look at Luma and then back to the pool. "I lost my voice," she said quietly. "I used to sing to the stars every night, but then one night, my song didn't come. It just disappeared." Luma sat beside her, and the lantern's light flickered softly. The dreamlight stirred within and began to swirl slowly, as if waking from a very long nap. "I've tried to sing," the nightjar continued, "but it feels like my voice is hiding. Maybe it's afraid of being alone." The dreamlight floated out of the lantern and hovered above the pool. Slowly, it dipped down and touched the surface of the water. Ripples spread across it, and for a moment, the stars in the reflection danced. Then a faint hum filled the air, soft and beautiful. It wasn't a song, not quite, more like the memory of a song. The nightjar's feathers fluffed in surprise. "That's it," she breathed. "That's where it went." The dreamlight floated back and circled her gently, brushing her wings with its glow. She closed her eyes and opened her beak, and slowly, shyly, a note came out. It was quiet but lovely, like the beginning of a lullaby long forgotten. The nightjar smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, curling into herself. "Now I can sing again? Tomorrow." The dreamlight settled into her chest, glowing gently. Luma stood and looked at the pool. It was still again, but something had changed. The stars in the reflection twinkled just a little brighter, like they had heard the song too. The night path pulsed gently beneath her feet. She followed it onward. As Luma walked, the trees returned, but these were different. Their trunks were pale as moonbeams, and their leaves were shaped like tiny hearts. They rustled softly, even though there was no breeze. Their sound was like a lullaby hummed by 100 sleepy creatures. Then, up ahead, Luma saw something curious. A small wooden archway covered in soft moss and tiny white blossoms stood across the path. Beneath it sat a bunny, young, with long ears and a sleepy face. He looked up as Luma approached, his nose twitching. "Is this the way?" he asked. Luma paused beside him. The lantern light flickered. "I've been waiting for someone to tell me it's okay to go through," the bunny whispered. "I'm not sure what's on the other side, and that makes me not scared exactly, just unsure." The dream light in the lantern stirred once more. It floated out and hovered before the archway. It didn't say anything, but its warmth filled the space like a hug. The bunny blinked. "It feels kind." He stood, slowly, and walked toward the light. The moment he passed beneath the arch, a soft breeze whispered through the leaves, and the night path glowed a little brighter. "I think I'm ready now," the bunny said, smiling back at Luma. "Thank you." And with that, he hopped gently down a smaller path that branched off from the main one, disappearing into a garden of glowing tulips that opened as he passed. Luma turned back to the night path. It waited for her. She stepped forward again, her lantern swinging like a cradle of stars, and the hush of the forest followed her into the next chapter of the dreaming night. The night path curled deeper into the woods, threading through a dreamscape that felt softer than ever before. The trees stood farther apart now, as if giving space for the stars to reach down and touch the earth. The air was filled with the scent of honeyed blossoms and the sound of night things sleeping, gentle sighs, tiny snores, and the occasional flutter of a moth's wings. Luma's lantern glowed steadily, the dream light within gently resting now, quiet between journeys. Her paws sank lightly into moss that seemed to hum underfoot, and her ears twitched at the distant sound of something, echoing. Not loudly. It was more like a whisper wrapped in music. As she followed the sound, the forest gave way to a small hilltop covered in silver clover. There, in the very center, stood a carousel. Not a large one, but small and delicate, carved from old wood and gilded in soft starlight. It wasn't spinning. It sat still, silent and forgotten, its painted animals frozen mid-prance. Sitting nearby was a young fox kit, tiny, with fur the color of dusk and eyes wide with wonder and confusion. He held a wooden acorn in his paws and looked up at the carousel with a puzzled frown. Luma approached slowly. The little fox looked at her, eyes lighting with recognition, though they'd never met. "You're her," he said softly, "the one who finds lost dreams." Luma sat beside him, lowering her lantern so its glow pooled gently around them. The little fox looked back at the carousel. "This used to turn," he said. "Every night in my dreams, it spun and played music. I used to ride it with my brothers and sisters, even if they're just pretend, but then the music stopped. And now, it's just quiet." The lantern flickered. Inside, the dream light stirred again, more slowly than before. It hovered within, waiting. "I tried to make it spin," the fox whispered, "but I think maybe the dream went away. Maybe it didn't want to stay with me anymore." Luma nuzzled him gently and then turned to the carousel. Her lantern's light flowed across its surface, warming the painted wood and glimmering on the golden edges. The dream light slowly floated out, brighter than it had been, and settled over the carousel like a veil. A soft sound drifted into the air. A music box melody, slow, delicate, and sweet. The fox gasped and clutched his acorn tighter. The carousel began to turn. Slowly, gently, the painted animals came to life. The wooden horses blinked sleepily. The deer swayed their heads. A bear with a flute twitched its paw. The carousel glowed with quiet joy. The fox stood, eyes wide with sleepy wonder, and stepped toward it. One of the little fox-shaped seats opened its arms to him, carved from ivy and starlight. He climbed in, curled into the seat, and the music continued. "I remember now," he said softly. "This dream isn't gone. It was waiting." The dream light drifted down and settled inside the wooden acorn. The fox clutched it close and closed his eyes as the carousel spun slowly through the hush of night. Luma watched as the music faded to a soft lull, and the carousel slowed once more, settling into quiet stillness, its job done. The night path shimmered again. Luma turned and followed. Beyond the hill, the trees returned. But this time they were different. They arched overhead like a cathedral, their branches interwoven with soft lights that bobbed like tiny lanterns. The path here was soft and cloud-like, and Luma felt as though she was walking through a dream's breath. In the middle of this gentle forest hall, she found a pond, not of water but of mist. It lay flat and still, and floating on its surface was a lily pad, larger than usual, and atop it a toad. The toad wore a tiny crown made of dandelion seeds. His eyes blinked slowly, one at a time, and he sighed as though he'd been waiting for a very long while. "You've come," he croaked quietly, bowing his head. Luma nodded, sitting on the pond's edge. "I once had a dream that I was something more," the toad said. "Not because I'm not enough, but because dreams let you stretch. They let you float." Luma watched him with kind eyes. "But the dream drifted away," he murmured. "It got caught in the weeds of worry and sank." The lantern flickered, and the dream light stirred once more. It floated from the lantern, danced once above the toad, and then dipped into the misty pond. A ripple formed, and for a moment, the surface shimmered like glass catching starlight. The toad stood on his lily pad. His crown shimmered faintly, and beneath his feet, the mist began to lift. The lily pad rose into the air, buoyed by invisible winds. The toad looked down in wonder. "I'm floating again," he whispered, "just like I dreamed." The dream light rose from the mist and settled gently within his crown, glowing like a tiny moon. The lily pad drifted slowly into the canopy, carried on dreams alone, while the toad looked down at Luma with sleepy joy. "I'll come down at sunrise," he said, curling up. "For now, I'll drift a while longer." The night path beckoned once more, and Luma, with her lantern gently glowing and her steps as quiet as moonlight, continued forward into the soft embrace of the dreaming world. The forest grew quieter still, as if even the night had curled itself into a blanket. The trees became sparser, their trunks pale and slender like candlelight frozen in wood. The night path stretched before Luma like a ribbon woven from clouds, barely touching the ground. The stars above shone brighter here, but not sharply, more like soft lanterns hanging in a velvet sky. Luma's lantern swayed gently with each step. The dream light within glowed like a heartbeat, slow and steady, waiting. As she walked, a faint sound began to emerge, so soft it almost felt imagined, a kind of whispery hum, like a sigh trying to remember its own song. Luma followed the sound, paused silent on the path, ears twitching toward the source. She came to a field filled with tall golden grass that shimmered like sleepy sunbeams dreaming under the moon. In the middle of the field stood a crooked tree, old and gentle, with bark like folded blankets and branches shaped like open arms. Resting at its roots was a tortoise, his shell mossy and round, his eyes half-lidded and thoughtful. He turned his head slowly as Luma approached, and a faint smile curved his wrinkled mouth. "I was hoping you'd come," he said in a voice that felt like old pages turning. "I've had a dream stuck inside me for seasons. I buried it deep, thinking I was too slow to chase it." Luma sat beside him, her lantern casting warm light across his shell. The tortoise sighed, his breath steady like the rhythm of the earth. "I dreamed once that I could fly," he said with a soft chuckle. "Not with wings, just with hope. But as the days grew longer and the nights shorter, I forgot how that dream felt." The lantern flickered. The dream light stirred and rose like a mist, floating slowly toward the tortoise. It touched the edge of his shell and shimmered. The tortoise closed his eyes. And then, ever so gently, his shell began to glow. Not brightly, just enough to lift a few inches from the earth. The tall grasses swayed around him, and the tree above him hummed a soft note of approval. "I'm floating," the tortoise murmured, eyes still closed. "Not far, just enough." The dream light settled into the glowing shell, tucking itself in like a firefly crawling into a hollow log. The tortoise sighed again, deeper this time, and nestled into the grass, the glow fading to a soft lull. Luma gave a quiet nod and rose. The night path shimmered again, curling around the sleepy tree and leading her onward. As she followed, the path began to rise slightly, leading into a hill that glowed with tiny lights, flowers that opened only at night, each one pulsing like a little breath. The air here felt lighter, as if dreams had thinned the space between the stars and the earth. At the top of the hill was a nest, huge and round, woven from stardust threads and willow twigs. Inside the nest sat an owl, older than the forest itself, her feathers like snow, woven with midnight. She looked down at Luma with deep, tired eyes. "Little lantern," she said softly, "you carry more than light, you carry memory." Luma bowed her head gently. "I have a dream I cannot quite remember," the owl continued. "It's buried beneath years of stories and shadows. I feel it flutter sometimes, but I cannot hold it." The dream light glowed warmer now. It rose from the lantern but did not go to the owl. Instead, it circled the nest, trailing light like a comet's tail. As it moved, soft whispers filled the air, not words, but echoes. Sounds of laughter, lullabies, the flap of small wings, the hush of snowfall. The owl blinked. Her feathers rustled slightly. "I remember," she breathed. "I dreamed of the first night I ever flew, the hush of the sky, the wonder in my chest. I dreamed of that moment when the world opened beneath me, and I was no longer part of the forest floor, but part of the air." The dreamlight paused above her heart and settled there like a gentle ember. Her eyes closed. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will dream it again tonight." Luma watched quietly as the owl drifted into sleep, her breath as deep and slow as the stars above. The path continued beyond the nest, and Luma followed it. The forest began to shift once more, this time into something more open, more quiet. Not empty, but expectant. A meadow of quiet reeds and mirror pools stretched before her, reflecting the sky in still ripples. In the middle of this peaceful place was a small bridge, arched gently over nothing. No river, no road, just air. On the bridge sat a chipmunk, legs dangling, staring into the sky. He turned as Luma arrived, his eyes wide and tired. "I'm not sure if I'm dreaming," he said. "Or if I've woken up in the middle of one." Luma placed her lantern beside him. The light spilled over the bridge like melted moonlight. "I had a dream that I was brave," the chipmunk continued. "But lately, I felt small. I've forgotten how to cross the bridges inside myself. The dreamlight swirled and lifted. It floated toward the far side of the bridge and pulsed gently. The chipmunk looked at it, then at Luma. "It's okay if I don't run, right?" he asked. "It's okay if I just walk, one step at a time?" Luma gave a soft nod. The chipmunk took a deep breath, stood, and began to cross the bridge, slowly, gently, his tiny paws steady and sure. When he reached the other side, the dreamlight floated down and touched his back, leaving a shimmer behind his shoulders. The chipmunk smiled, turning once more. "I think I'll keep walking," he said, "even if I don't know where the dream ends." And with that, he wandered into the mist. The night path shimmered again, calling softly to Luma, and so she walked, her lantern aglow, her heart filled with the warmth of dreams found and remembered, the night gently unfolding before her like a story told by the stars. The night path now led through a glade so quiet that even the stars seemed to pause. The air was thick with stillness, not heavy but tender, like the world holding its breath in wonder. Luma's lantern glowed steadily, its dreamlight calm, as if it too was listening closely for what came next. Each step she took felt softer than the last, as though she walked not on earth but through a memory. The trees around her were translucent, their trunks thin and glowing faintly from within. Their leaves shimmered like glass touched by candlelight, and they didn't rustle, they chimed gently with every breeze. Ahead, nestled between two glowing trees, sat a hedgehog, not the sleepy one from before, but an older hedgehog with glasses perched on the edge of his snout and a tiny book resting open in his lap. He didn't look surprised to see Luma. Instead, he smiled softly as she approached. "I was hoping you'd find me before I forgot," he said, his voice as calm as moonlight. "I've had this dream for many, many years, a dream of finishing the story I began when I was very young. But the words, they've grown shy. They hide when I try to write them." Luma sat across from him, her lantern casting its golden glow across the pages. The dreamlight stirred inside and began to hum, a sound like pages turning, soft and slow. "I remember the beginning," the hedgehog continued. "It was about a small, brave creature who carried light through the night. He walked a path no one else could see and helped dreams find their way home. But then..." He trailed off and looked at the empty lines in his book. The dreamlight rose from the lantern and hovered above the open pages. One by one, the lines began to glow faintly, not with words, but with feelings, warmth, courage, gentleness. The hedgehog gasped. "Oh," he whispered, "I don't need to find the ending. I already lived it." The dreamlight drifted down into the book and disappeared between the pages. The words remained unwritten, but the story was complete. He closed the book with a soft sigh and smiled at Luma. "Thank you, little fox. I will dream the ending now, not write it." Luma rose, and the path ahead shimmered once more. She followed it. The trees began to fade into fog, not cold or thick, but silvery and soft, like breath on a window pane. Shapes moved gently within it, nothing frightening, only the shadows of dreams in transit. Luma walked calmly, her lantern guiding her forward. Soon, she came to a place where the fog lifted slightly, revealing a garden. But this was no ordinary garden. The flowers here were not just petals and stems. They were memories, blooming and swaying in the still air. Each blossom glowed with its own hue, some golden like laughter, others pale blue like bedtime tears. The garden was quiet, watched over by a deer with antlers shaped like constellations. She stood tall, her eyes kind, and her breath misted gently in the air. "You carry the light," the deer said, bowing her head. "Would you like to plant a dream of your own?" Luma paused. She had never thought of that. Her pause had carried so many others' dreams, but she had never once placed one of her own into the soil of the world. The lantern flickered, and the dreamlight hesitated, then gently rose and floated above her head. The deer stepped aside and motioned to a patch of soft moss. Without a word, Luma walked forward, and the dreamlight drifted down into the ground, nestling like a seed into the quiet earth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, from that very spot, a flower bloomed. It was shaped like a star with petals that shimmered in gold and silver. At its heart was a tiny light, soft, familiar, eternal. The deer nodded. "It will grow here. Your dream. The one you never spoke aloud. It is safe now." Luma looked at it for a long moment, her tail gently brushing the moss. Then she turned, her lantern still glowing, and walked on. The path led her through the rest of the garden, where dream flowers swayed and sighed softly as she passed. Each one nodded in gratitude. Some had once been lost, others had only just begun to bloom. At the garden's edge sat a little raccoon cub, eyes wide with wonder, holding a single flower in his paws. "Did you plant this?" he asked. Luma shook her head softly. "Someone did," the cub said, cradling the bloom. "It smells like bedtime and stardust. I think it belongs in my dreams." He hugged the flower to his chest, and it pulsed gently with light. The night path curled forward once more, winding gently into a valley filled with mist and music. The wind carried soft tunes, notes like raindrops on feathers, and Luma followed the melody without hesitation. The ground here was plush and glowing, like walking across layers of gentle echoes. Trees stood far apart, giving space for the music to drift between them, and nestled among their roots was a sloth, long-limbed and still, his eyes closed, a small tear resting on his cheek. Luma approached and sat beside him, her lantern dimmed slightly, matching the soft quiet of the space. "I had a dream," the sloth said slowly, his voice like a whisper drawn from deep within. "But it moved too fast. I couldn't keep up, so I let it go." The lantern flickered. The dream light rose, then paused. It didn't fly. It drifted. Softly, slowly, it swayed through the air, circling the sloth like a lullaby. The sloth breathed in. "It's still here," he said. "It didn't leave me behind. It waited." The dream light settled on his chest. Not bright, not loud, just present. The sloth smiled and closed his eyes, and Luma, the little lantern fox, rose again and stepped into the mist as the night path shimmered ahead, always leading, always whispering. The night path now led through a forest unlike any Luma had yet seen. The trees had become tall and glassy, their trunks smooth and glowing with soft inner light, like lanterns hidden inside crystal. Their branches reached high, almost touching the stars, and their leaves whispered not in sound but in feelings, warmth, comfort, memory. Luma's steps were slower now, not from weariness but reverence. Each footfall seemed to echo with a quiet history, like she was walking not just through the forest, but through time itself. Her lantern glowed with a steady, golden warmth, the dream light inside quiet and still, as if resting after many gentle journeys. Then, as the path curved gently around a cluster of glowing mushrooms, she saw a strange structure ahead. It was a house, not large, not grand, but delicate and round, made entirely of woven branches and soft grasses, nestled into a hillside. Its windows glowed faintly, and a tiny wind chime tinkled softly above the door, singing a lullaby only the night could hear. Outside the house sat an old mole, bundled in a cozy shawl, rocking slowly in a mossy chair. He looked up as Luma approached, and his eyes twinkled beneath his spectacles. "Well now," he said in a voice full of stories, "aren't you the little light bringer everyone's been whispering about?" Luma sat before him, her lantern resting beside her. "I thought maybe I dreamed you," the mole continued. "Or maybe I dreamed of dreaming you. It gets hard to tell sometimes when you're as old as the hills." He chuckled softly, and the chimes above his door responded with a silver laugh. "I used to have dreams every night," the mole said. "Big ones, little ones, silly ones. I kept them in a wooden box by my bedside. But one night I forgot to open the box, and the next night, and the next. I think the dreams got tired of waiting." Luma looked gently at him, and the dream light stirred once again, like a candle remembering how to flicker. It rose slowly and drifted toward the mole's rocking chair, then circled his paws, his shawl, his heart. The mole blinked. "Oh, I remember," he whispered. "There was one dream I loved most of all. I used to dream I was a great storyteller, telling tales to all the forest children under the stars. They would gather round, sleepy-eyed and giggling, and I'd weave the night into stories." The dreamlight swirled faster, brighter. The door to the little house opened gently, and a small group of forest creatures peeked out. Baby squirrels, young frogs, a shy little beaver, and even a fox cub. They padded forward, sleepy but curious, drawn by the lantern's glow. The mole blinked in amazement. "They came." He cleared his throat, sat a bit straighter, and said, "Would you like to hear a story, my dears?" The dreamlight pulsed in delight. And so, as the night path shimmered softly behind her, Luma curled up beside the chair and listened as the old mole told a tale of stars and seeds, of rivers and raccoons, of sleepy foxes who lit up the world one dream at a time. When the story ended, the children clapped softly, their eyes shining, and one by one, they curled up around the old mole and drifted into dreams of their own. The dream light floated gently into the shawl wrapped around the mole's shoulders and disappeared like a secret kept safe. The night path shimmered again. Luma rose and walked on. She passed through a stretch of forest where the air shimmered with music. Not songs exactly, but notes made from wind and memory. The path wove through this music like a thread in a song, and every step Luma took added a note of her own. At the end of the melody, she found a small hollow lit by hundreds of glowing stones. They pulsed in soft rhythms like heartbeats resting in the earth. In the center of the hollow sat a young bear, not quite a cub, but not yet grown. He looked troubled, staring at a single stone in his paw. "I think I broke my dream," he said when Luma approached. He showed her the stone. It was cracked down the middle, a tiny thread of darkness inside its light. "It used to glow bright," the bear whispered. "It was a dream of courage, but then I felt small one day. I doubted myself and the light cracked." Luma looked at the stone and the lantern flickered. The dream light rose, smaller than before, but more focused. It drifted down and settled into the crack, not to seal it, but to fill it with warmth. The stone did not become perfect, but it began to glow again, softly, truly. The bear stared at it, and tears welled in his eyes. "Even cracked, it still dreams," he whispered. Luma nodded. The bear smiled, clutching the glowing stone to his chest. "I'll carry it gently," he said, "and maybe it'll grow brighter with time." The night path called once more. As Luma followed it onward, she passed more quiet places. A hammock of starlight swaying between two silver trees, a circle of fox kits sleeping in a bed of dandelions, and a raccoon humming in his sleep, wrapped in a quilt made of feathers and fern. Each step she took, the world seemed to soften further, the night growing quieter, deeper. And far ahead, just barely visible beyond the next rise, the path began to change, wider now, glowing not just beneath her paws, but reaching up into the sky. Something waited there, not an ending, but something very close to the heart of dreams. The night path had changed. It was no longer a simple ribbon of soft light winding through trees. Now it stretched into the sky itself, arcing upward like a bridge of stardust. The stars above seemed to lean closer, their glow warmer, gentler, as if they too had been waiting for this moment. The air grew lighter with every step, filled with a hush so deep it felt sacred. Luma's paws did not make a sound. The lantern in her mouth glowed brighter than ever before, though not blinding, just full like a heart overflowing. She climbed the starlit path gently, not rushing. Her breath was steady, her steps sure, and her golden fur shimmered with reflected light. The sky around her was no longer only above. It was beside her, beneath her, within her. Each step was like floating. And then she arrived. At the summit of the sky bridge stood a circle of light, gentle and pulsing like a moon sigh. It was not solid, nor was it empty. It shimmered like the surface of a bubble just before it vanishes. In its center sat a figure, not an animal, not a star, something in between. It had eyes like galaxies and a smile like a lullaby. Its form shifted softly, like clouds in moonlight. It rose as Luma approached, and its voice was not loud, but it filled the space completely. "You've brought them all home," it said. "Every forgotten whisper, every lost shimmer, every scared small wish. You carried them gently. You asked for nothing. You only glowed." Luma placed her lantern gently on the ground. The dream light inside pulsed once, then lifted, glowing brighter than ever before. It floated into the air above her, where it began to spin, slow and sure like a tiny star being born. "You are more than a keeper of dreams now," said the figure. "You are a dream yourself." From behind Luma came the soft patter of paws, the flap of wings, the rustle of leaves. One by one, all the dreamers she had helped appeared on the path behind her. The hedgehog with the lost lullaby, the raccoon with the wooden flute, the baby deer, the fox kit, the owl, the tortoise, the chipmunk, the mole, the bear. They came not to be guided, but to witness. The sky began to shimmer all around them, like water catching the morning sun, and then the circle of light widened, pulsing outward. Luma stepped forward. The dream light above her burst softly, no sound, no flash, just warmth. A soft glow that wrapped around every creature present. The night path shimmered one final time, then gently melted into the stars. The forest was still below, wrapped in a deep, peaceful sleep. In the quiet sky, where the dream light had bloomed, a new star appeared. Not the brightest, not the largest, but the warmest. It flickered gently, never harsh, always steady, like a lantern guiding hearts home through the quiet of night. And though the night path could no longer be seen, every creature knew it still existed, in lullabies, in sighs, in the hush before sleep, and in the heart of every little dream, a fox-shaped light glowed on, forever gentle, forever glowing. The lantern fox, Luma, the quiet guide of sleeping worlds.